The rain on the skylight sounded like gravel thrown against glass. Inside the isolated cabin, Rita clutched a mug of chamomile tea, her knuckles white. She looked at her husband, Rosco, who was busy checking the deadbolts on the heavy oak door for the third time that hour. "They're still out there," Rita whispered, her voice trembling. "I saw a flashlight beam near the wood line. Rosco, they traced us all the way from the city." Rosco walked over, kneeling beside her chair to rub her shaking shoulders. "Hey, look at me. We are safe inside. I checked the perimeter. They can't get in without making a lot of noise. We have the upper hand here." For 3 months, their lives had been a living nightmare. It started with subtle things, rearranged lawn furniture, heavy breathing on the landline, and shadows lingering at the edge of their suburban property. Then came the photograph left on their car windshield. Candid, terrifying pictures of Rita sleeping, of Roscoe grocery shopping. The police in their home county had been useless, filing reports but offering no real protection. Desperate to escape the suffocating terror, Rosco and Rita had packed a single suitcase each and fled to this rented cabin in the deep woods of Blackwood County, hoping to lose their pursuers. But they hadn't lost them. The stalkers had followed. A sharp metallic scrape echoed from the porch. Rita gasped, dropping her mug. It shattered, dark liquid pooling across the pine floorboards. Rosco instantly reached into his waistband, pulling out a heavy, matte black revolver. His face hardened. "Stay behind me," Rosco commanded in a low, fierce whisper. Through the frosted glass window next to the door, a silhouette materialized. It was tall, draped in a dark raincoat. A second, shorter figure stepped up besides the first. They were standing right outside, completely motionless, staring at the door. The sheer audacity of the tormentors were paralyzing. They didn't knock, they didn't yell, they just waited, projecting a silent, predatory malice that filled the cabin with dread. "Please," Rita sobbed quietly, gripping Roscoe's shirt. "Don't let them do it. Don't let them take us." "They won't," Roscoe growled, leveling the gun at the door. "If they step through that threshold, I'll end this." Outside, the rain began to pour harder, drowning out the sounds of the forest. The two figures on the porch slowly turned away, melting back into the pitch-black woods. Roscoe didn't lower the gun. He knew this was a psychological game. The stalkers wanted them exhausted. They wanted them broken. A quarter-mile down the gravel road, parked under the heavy canopy of weeping willows, sat a mud-splattered SUV. Inside the vehicle, Magnolia wiped the fog from the windshield, her eyes wide with adrenaline. Beside her, in the driver's seat, Pierre stared intently at a glowing tablet screen that displayed a live GPS tracking dot. "They're inside," Pierre said, his voice laced with an intense, quiet focus. "The signal from the tracker we put on their bumper is solid. They aren't running anymore." Magnolia let out a breath that was half laugh, half sigh. "Finally, I thought they were going to lead us halfway across the country. Did you see the look on Rita's face through the window before we backed off? She looked absolutely fragile, like glass." Pierre smiled, a slow, chilling expression that didn't reach his eyes. He reached into the back seat and pulled forward a heavy duffel bag. When he unzipped it, the dim interior light of the car reflected off the polished steel of hunting knives, zip ties, a roll of heavy duct tape, and a small canister of chloroform. "They think they can just run away from what they owe," Magnolia murmured, her tone shifting into something deeply resentful. "They think they can just leave the past behind and start over somewhere else. Not after what they did to my brother. Not after the hit and run." "We spent a year tracking them down, Magnolia," Pierre said, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "The police wouldn't look into Roscoe because of his family's money, but they can't protect him out here. Tonight we seek justice for Tommy." Magnolia nodded, her fear replaced by cold, calculated focus. They had played the role of the terrifying shadows for months. Driving Roscoe and Rita to the brink. Now it was time for the final confrontation. Pierre checked his watch. 2:15 a.m. Let's go. Back in the cabin, the fire had died down to glowing red embers. The room was dark, save for the occasional flash of lightning. Rosco was sitting on the floor, the revolver resting on his knee. Suddenly, a soft click echoed from the kitchen window. Rosco stood up instantly, his movements fluid and silent. He didn't look like a man pushed to his limits. He looked patient. He glanced at Rita. Her expression of frantic terror had vanished, replaced by a cold, predatory gaze. She sat up slowly, pulling a tactical knife from beneath the sofa cushion. "They're inside," Rita whispered, her voice chillingly steady. Rosco smiled. For 3 months they hadn't been running out of fear. They had been luring Magnolia and Pierre into an isolated territory they had prepared. They were predators who enjoyed the game of being hunted. Footsteps padded onto the kitchen floor. Pierre led the way into the living room, knife drawn. "Don't move," he hissed. But the sofa was empty. Before Pierre could react, Rosco emerged from the shadows, striking with sudden, overwhelming force. Pierre collapsed as his weapon clattered away. "Pierre!" Magnolia cried, but Rita was already blocking her exit. Rita moved with terrifying speed, forcing Magnolia to the ground. The reversal was complete. Rosco turned on the overhead lights. The harsh illumination exposed the trap. "You really thought you were the wolves?" Rosco laughed. "We've known about your blue SUV for months." Magnolia looked up at Rita in horror. "Why, you killed my brother." "We enjoy the thrill of the hunt," Rita said softly, "and motivated prey makes the game so much more interesting." Pierre wheezed. "Magnolia, run." "Nobody's running," Rosco said, leveling the revolver. But then the front door was suddenly forced open with a violent crash. A massive, towering figure stood in the threshold, silhouette by the lightning. This cabin hadn't been a neutral ground. It was the territory of a local legend known for his absolute hostility to any intruders. The newcomer didn't care about the complex history between the two couples. To this third party, everyone in the room was simply a trespasser. Rosco fired his weapon, but the figure surged forward, undeterred by the resistance. In the chaos that followed, the psychological games and the quest for revenge were eclipsed by a much more primal struggle for survival. The light in the cabin flickered and then failed, leaving only the sounds of the storm and the finality of the encounter. Blackwood Butcher didn't use complex strategies or psychological games to eliminate the 4 trespassers. He ended them with pure, overwhelming physical violence. Rosco, after his bullets failed to stop the towering figure, the butcher swung his roaring concrete saw upward, instantly cutting through Rosco's torso. Rita, in her desperate counterattack, she managed to bury her tactical knife deep into the butcher's shoulder, but he felt no pain. He grabbed her by the throat, lifted her off her feet, and snapped her neck with a single twist of his wrist. Pierre and Magnolia, unable to escape the confines of the cabin, the couple found themselves at the mercy of the homeowner. With no remaining defenses, they were unable to survive the final confrontation in the darkness. By dawn, the woods of Blackwood County were silent. The storm had washed away the tracks, leaving only an empty cabin and the chilling mystery of what had inspired within.